For decades, fans believed Harrison Ford and George Lucas shared a perfect creative bond, the visionary director and his fearless star. But behind the scenes of Star Wars, the truth was far messier. Ford often clashed with Lucas. Years later, Ford admitted bluntly, "I was done with him." How did one of cinema's most legendary partnerships nearly collapse under the weight of frustration, stubbornness, and control? Before Harrison Ford became Han Solo, he was far from a Hollywood superstar. He had struggled for years as a young actor, often typecast in minor roles. By the early 1970s, Ford was supplementing his income as a carpenter, building cabinets for Hollywood clients. Ironically, this side job brought him back into the orbit of George Lucas, who had cast Ford in a small role in American Graffiti in 1973. Lucas remembered Ford's natural charisma, but he wasn't the obvious choice for Star Wars. Studio executives initially resisted, pushing for established names. Yet Ford's casual, rebellious energy made him a perfect foil to Mark Hamill's wide-eyed Luke Skywalker. When Ford finally read the lines as Han Solo, he brought a swagger and sarcasm that electrified the dialogue. But even in those early days, tension simmered. Ford quickly noticed Lucas's approach to directing, highly technical, focused on visuals, and far less concerned with the nuances of performance. Ford respected Lucas's vision but felt constrained by the rigid dialogue. As he would later put it, "You can type this shit, but you sure can't say it." That quote captured Ford's frustration with Lucas's refusal to allow improvisation or looseness in the script. Still, despite the friction, Star Wars premiered in 1977 and turned Ford into a household name. The film's staggering success cemented their partnership, but it also set the stage for deeper conflicts as the saga continued. As The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi were produced, Ford's unease with Lucas's working style grew. Unlike some actors who were content to deliver lines exactly as written, Ford pushed for authenticity and realism. He wanted Han Solo to sound like a flesh-and-blood character, not a mouthpiece for technical exposition. This creative tug-of-war often left Ford frustrated. George Lucas was not known for giving actors detailed direction. His focus was on groundbreaking visual effects and world-building, sometimes at the expense of character nuance. Cast members, including Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill, often joked that Lucas's only real instruction was faster, more intense. Ford's dissatisfaction peaked during discussions about Han Solo's fate. By the time of Return of the Jedi, Ford was openly lobbying for Han to die heroically, believing it would add emotional weight to the story. Lucas resisted, fearing the loss of a popular character would hurt merchandising and box office prospects. Ford felt his creative input was undervalued, further straining the partnership. Still, professionalism kept the films moving forward. Despite his private frustrations, Ford delivered iconic performances that helped turn Han Solo into one of cinema's most beloved characters. Yet behind the scenes, the actor was increasingly done with Lucas's methods, a feeling that would resurface many years later when fans begged for reunions and reboots. By the early 1980s, Harrison Ford had become one of the biggest stars in the world. His role as Indiana Jones in Raiders of the Lost Ark, also produced by George Lucas and directed by Steven Spielberg, only deepened the complicated dynamic between Ford and Lucas. On paper, they were unstoppable. Lucas crafted the vision, Spielberg directed with flair, and Ford embodied the rugged, charismatic hero. But Ford still bristled at Lucas's script-driven rigidity. In interviews, he repeatedly voiced his dissatisfaction with the dialogue Lucas wrote, insisting it often sounded unnatural. When reflecting years later, Ford admitted bluntly, "I was done with him." The comment shocked fans, but it reflected a deep creative exhaustion. For Ford, Lucas's brilliance as a world builder was undeniable, but his lack of sensitivity to actors left little room for collaboration. The tension wasn't about money or fame, it was about control. Ford wanted space to shape his characters, while Lucas wanted precise execution of his ideas. This clash of egos and methods strained their partnership and contributed to Ford's reluctance to remain tied to Star Wars indefinitely. After the original trilogy wrapped in 1983, Ford distanced himself from George Lucas and the galaxy far, far away. While Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher embraced fan conventions and interviews about Star Wars, Ford largely avoided revisiting the saga. To many fans, it seemed like he wanted to bury Han Solo forever. In Hollywood circles, whispers circulated that Ford's relationship with Lucas had soured. Journalists repeatedly asked him about the feud, and while Ford often downplayed it, his subtle jabs told the story. At one point, he quipped that Lucas's scripts were clunky, and that directors like Irvin Kershner on The Empire Strikes Back gave the actors far more freedom. Meanwhile, George Lucas continued to expand his empire with Lucasfilm and Industrial Light and Magic. He focused on technology and special effects innovation, while Ford pursued a career filled with critically acclaimed and commercially successful roles in films like Witness, The Fugitive, and Blade Runner. The distance between them grew. To the public, it looked like two men walking different paths. One obsessed with control and innovation, the other striving for authenticity and independence. By the time Lucas announced the prequel trilogy in the late 1990s, Ford was entirely uninvolved, further fueling speculation that the rift had never healed. As time went on, Harrison Ford's blunt remarks about George Lucas began surfacing more often in interviews. For years, fans speculated whether the tension was exaggerated by the media. But when Ford openly said, "You can type this shit, George, but you can't say it," it confirmed what insiders had long whispered. The actor had little patience for Lucas's stiff dialogue. Fans were stunned. Many had assumed that the Star Wars family was as tight-knit behind the scenes as the characters appeared on screen. Instead, the revelation painted a more complicated picture. Lucas, for his part, rarely addressed the feud directly. True to his reserved nature, he let Ford's comments hang in the air, unchallenged. In fan forums, magazines, and TV specials, the story took on a life of its own. Did Ford resent being typecast as Han Solo? Did Lucas feel betrayed by an actor who owed much of his fame to Star Wars? The speculation created a narrative of betrayal and disappointment, one that persisted for decades. Yet the consequences went beyond gossip. Ford's detachment from the franchise gave Lucas the freedom to control its future without interference. At the same time, Ford's reputation as a fiercely independent actor grew stronger. Audiences admired him for speaking his mind, even if it meant clashing with one of Hollywood's most powerful creators. In later years, Harrison Ford softened some of his comments, but he never completely walked them back. When he returned as Han Solo in The Force Awakens in 2015, it wasn't George Lucas directing anymore. Lucas had sold Lucasfilm to Disney. To many, that return signaled Ford's complicated relationship with the saga. He would honor the role and the fans, but his partnership with Lucas was never fully repaired. Ford has acknowledged Lucas's genius, crediting him for creating Han Solo and Indiana Jones. Yet, he also made it clear that working together was never easy. In contrast, Lucas has generally avoided criticizing Ford, perhaps recognizing that their creative tension was part of what made the original trilogy so electric. By the time Ford turned 81, his honesty about being done with Lucas resonated less as anger and more as a candid reflection from a man unafraid to speak his truth. Fans now see it as part of Ford's personality, blunt, straightforward, and unwilling to play Hollywood's polished game. Their legacy remains forever intertwined. Lucas, the visionary world builder, and Ford, the reluctant but unforgettable hero who gave those worlds life. Together, they created magic. Even if behind the scenes the relationship was fractured. Looking back, the feud between Harrison Ford and George Lucas was never about hatred. It was about vision. Lucas was a perfectionist who wanted his words and worlds to remain intact. Ford was an instinctive actor who believed characters came alive through spontaneity. These two forces collided again and again, and though it caused friction, it also produced some of cinema's most enduring moments. Thanks for watching. Click here to check another video and make sure to subscribe to our channel.